challenges. One, they're very concrete and literal. And so there's like a train on a train track. Because once it gets going, they're concrete and literal. It's always going to happen. It's always going to go the same way. And their mind, well, I apologize. I'm a little nervous today. I think Mom embarrassed me when she broke my arm. So, so their mind can be like a train. So it's headed one direction. And I know there's a movie that recently came out where the train crashes or whatever. And if you don't slow that train down, guess what happens? It crashes and burns. So I think Jordan and his mom, we were talking about the other day, they said, Jordan, you need to pull your train near the train station. Okay? So great metaphor. Very concrete, very literal, and he could think about it that way. And he thought that was one of the most helpful things to understand. My brain is like a train. Because once it's headed somewhere, he was doing a speech, right? I asked him to stop. What he do was like, and a couple of minutes of like, really? So he was trying to stop. So that's important to think about. I talked a little bit last week about perspective taking, so I just want to touch on that real quick. For those who weren't here last week, so these are my dogs. What is happening in the picture? Anyway. Curiosity, bone. Who's curious?
The dog without the bone.
What's that?
The dog without the bone.
The dog without the bone. How do you know he's curious? Or she, the she.
Taking interest in what the other dog is doing.
And you probably can't see it from there, but her eyes are huge. I mean, they're really big. Okay? And so she's staring at it. And I took this picture. They had actually been standing there for like 2 minutes. I got to take a picture of this. This is a great example of perspective taking, if I could use this. And then Rosie, she's up front. She has the bone, and she's just standing there. And her nose is just this nose, really close to it. And they're just standing there. So what do you think this dog in the front is thinking?
She's waiting for the other dog to grab at it.
Yeah. What's that?
Mind your own.
Mind your own, yeah. She's saying, don't touch my bone. I'm going to protect it. And the one in the back is saying, I want your bone. I want your bone. And they do this game a lot. There's actually another one that's like the one in the background, but you can't find him. But anyway, so part of this is we're able to look at that picture and say, I know what that dog's thinking, and I know what that other dog's thinking. It's called perspective taking. Okay? And actually, I was just reading some research or listening to some research today. I was driving. It starts to develop about 18 months. And right about 4 years old, between 4 and 5, kids together. They can understand from another person's perspective something. So one of the challenges when you're doing interventions is you can try and reason with individuals on the autism spectrum, but it doesn't make sense to them because they can't understand it from your perspective. It's very, very difficult. Jordan and I, we worked on some of that, of just understanding things, which is really important. So here's a couple things about learning preferences for individuals on the autism spectrum. I'm used to just having one screen, so this is kind of like, so a couple things. One is they need things to be predictable, organized, repetition works well for them. Visual cues or supports help. The information, the more concrete it is, the easier it is for them to understand it. So I was just talking with a parent today, and there was some question, a history question, and it was something about the general store, right? And the kid's like, well, he didn't know. Now, I don't know the exact answer, but I think general store, I think old-time general store. That's what comes in my head. And that's what he was trying to do, but they wanted to do, like, what does a general store have? Like a general store in the community have? So he took it very literal and concrete as an assignment. So we had to send it back to the teacher and say, could you help explain to him what it is? Because he wouldn't allow Mom to kind of tweak the assignment, so because it belonged to the teacher. So part of it is sustained attention is really difficult for them. So this is an example of an easy intervention. Okay. I don't know why I took a picture of him, but I did, and I happen to have it on my computer. So I'm working with this kid. I go in and he's watching his favorite show. I don't remember what it was, Ben 10 or Transformers or something. Mom forgot to tell him I'm coming. Okay. So now he's got to stop her preferred activity. So his train's going. He's like, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And now Mom says, you've got to stop. So it's like, but it's not, it's going to take 10, 20 minutes for me to slow his brain down and switch him so I could do some work with him. So he started to escalate. And this gets very physically aggressive, very little communication. Except he can write. He can write. And he will write and draw pictures. So he drew me a picture, I would have kept his, of a pause button. He drew a pause button and did a no sign through it. No pause, Brett. Okay, that's what I'm telling you. Okay? So I was like, okay, he's not hearing, he doesn't want to pause this. So I wrote this out and I said, pause for Brett, unpause when done playing with Brett, and he leaves. And he stopped. And we did our stuff, and he went back to it, right? So sometimes interventions don't have to be anything, but I just grabbed a piece of paper, I just had it with me, pure luck, I don't know if it was luck, but experience, and it worked. I just took what he was doing with me, and it worked, okay? Didn't work every time, but this is a good example. Here's another example of a visual support that I did with a kid, and we just grabbed a piece of paper. He struggled with knowing what to do. We all have to-do lists, right? It's a simple to-do list, right? So and actually this is his, the one where it's crossed out, you can't see it. He had to cross it out so you couldn't see it anymore. Now, here's the hard part. Some kids want to cross it all out so you can't see any of it, okay? So I'm like, oh no, I got 16 minutes maybe, and as Jordan says, towards the end of the day I'm really late. So, because usually something happens, another thing. And the other part is when I try to leave homes, I try not to leave the kid escalate because that's not good news. So I have to kind of put them back together before I leave. But anyway, these are just simple things that I've done. You don't have to create anything complex. And this is a kid that if you put it down, he knew what to expect, he knew what the routine was. He's probably 12, pretty high functioning kid. He just needed that visual support. And everybody's talking about let's have a meeting, let's design some fancy things, and we'll laminate it, and we'll have some cool sparkly stuff on it. And I'm like, I don't have time for sparkly stuff, and I'm a guy, so, you know, right? So, because the other part about sparkly stuff, you're going to be devastated when they rip it and tear it. And it will happen, I promise you. I had a classroom, a room that was mine, and I had a professional that worked with me, and she did all these cool things. After 3 weeks, she stopped doing stuff in her room because she cut flowers out, and all these kids would come and rip them, and all this stuff. She's like, oh, they did it again. She did it again after 3 weeks. She said, I'm never doing it again. I said, yeah, I told you so. I didn't say that. But I was like, well, lesson learned, I guess. So, okay. So here's some things that are really important. Develop a plan, okay? It's okay to have it up here, but in the moment, it's hard. I can talk about this stuff, and it's hard for me. I will literally write stuff down, put it on the dash of my car, so I remember as I'm headed to Shelby or somewhere, remember to do this, remember to do this, remember to use this phrase, because it's really important to have a plan, okay? Don't have to type it, just write it on a piece of paper, because when you have to review it in the moment with the kid, that's really important. So it needs to be easy to implement, if possible, right? You need to review your plan, because a lot of times it's going to change. And what works one day may not work the next, but it may work next week. Okay, so that's where the complication comes in as, well, it worked last week, but not this week, but it worked next week. So, and then people say, Brett, why isn't this working? I said, well, it worked a couple of times, let's figure out what's going on. And there's so many factors that come into play in interventions. So consistency, revise, and if something doesn't work, I classify it as a learning opportunity. I don't use failure. I had parents that say, what am I doing wrong today? I said, you're not doing anything wrong. It's a good learning opportunity because we're going to grow from that, okay? And if you can word things that way, that's great. The other part, if you do an intervention consistently for 2 to 3 weeks, okay? Consistently means every day, right? After 2 to 3 weeks. If it doesn't get better, you need to really revise it. One of the things that happens when you do a new intervention is behavior spikes. And sometimes it spikes dramatically. So you have a kid who's not aggressive, you do an intervention, now becomes aggressive, and then you have to decide, do I keep this intervention in place? Do I not? And sometimes it's a matter about working through whatever that is to get to the other side. And a clear example is Well, I didn't have a kid that was really aggressive, but so I was working with him, and we had M&Ms. He could earn the M&Ms for so many casts they used. So the challenging part is, and I forgot about the story till just now, is so if I gave him an M&M, right, and I have a bag of M&Ms, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to eat some, right? So if I ate one, he got mad because now there's not an even number of M&Ms in the bag, okay? I'm like, okay. Then he was paying attention to color, right? He wouldn't eat a certain color. I could not eat a certain color, okay? But then there was only so many of one color, so that caused a problem. So, and I had a bag of M&Ms, like a 1 pound bag, right? And then I was like, okay, this is not going very well. And I should have known when I came in because I just knew the kid well enough. So anyway, I'm trying to leave, and I'm like, this isn't going very well. So after an hour of me trying to make sure there was even amount of M&Ms, because we were counting several hundred M&Ms, right? So I try to leave, and he grabs my leg, and he's probably as big as me, this young kid. And I'm like, okay, so now he's grabbing my leg. He wants me to go because he has to earn all the M&Ms in the bag. So I have several hundred M&Ms, okay? So mom's having a meltdown. Well, her anxiety's up, okay? Because she's like, oh no, I got to get him off your leg. And I said, no. He can hang on to my leg. I'm going to wait, because I'll wait hours with kids, okay? So, and I've learned. So my point with this is sometimes you have to be willing to go through it and do that. Now, next time I came, I had a small bag of M&Ms with 20, the color he liked, and I made sure they weren't broken, okay? So, you know, those are the silly things that you have to do because it matters. Now, some people say, that's silly, and I said, yes, I agree. Well, my goal with this kid is compliance. I wanted to get him to comply with me. That's all I wanted to do. I could care less about the M&M. I want him to comply with some simple tasks, okay? So sometimes you gotta trade off one or the other, but it takes years of doing this, but it works. So, all right, challenging behavior serves a purpose, okay? So the kids have behaviors for reasons. When Jordan talked about sensory stuff, sensory overload, these lights drive kids crazy. Okay, there's all sorts of things like that. So behavior serves a purpose. So a kid might act out in a classroom because the lights are bothering them because they actually blink at a very high frequency. People who come to my office, I still haven't changed the light bulb. I have these lights, and it blinks like, right? It drives me nuts, okay? But I haven't changed the light bulb yet because I'm only there like 2 days a week, and I got to go buy a box of light bulbs. But the whole goal of some behavior is kids, there's a reason for it. So I try to understand what is that purpose. So the interventions are designed around that. So I'm going to do a little exercise with people. One of the things I try to do with kids, and this applies to adults too, but some of this has to be tweaked because there's not a lot of information working for adults with Asperger's. You can find a ton between 0 and 5. Right? There's more with teenagers. Okay. I think, man, I should have wrote a book, but I hate writing. So, so what we need to do is teach kids what to do, okay? That sounds simple, but a lot of people want their kids to listen, okay? I'm going to write on the whiteboard, so I apologize. I would like people to tell me what listening means. Because we want our kids to do it, but I want to know what listening is, because I have to teach kids how to listen. So what is listening?
Self-discipline.
Okay, so, and I apologize, I'm going to push you guys a little bit, but what is self-discipline? Because that's a vague term for an individual.
Eyes on the speaker.
What's that?
Eyes on the speaker.
Eyes on the speaker, yeah.
Quiet mouth.
Eyes, mouth.
Hands and feet still.
Be still. Okay, and that's vague, so you have to be specific.
Intention to understand.
Be more specific for me. And somebody get mad when last time we did this, so I stopped answering anything because I made them upset. But I want you to be specific, because if I have to teach this to somebody, how do I teach them? Because your definition and my definition are different. Eyes on the speaker is something I could teach. Quiet mouth is something I teach.
You want to repeat what I say?
Okay. Repeat. Okay. What else?
A responsive.
A response of some kind.
Lean in.
Lean in. Right. And response of some kind, but I want a response that's related.
Nodding
Okay.
your head.
Nodding your head. Okay, now I can tell you, how many of us nod our head when we really don't know what somebody's saying, but we nod? Okay. Why do you do that?